Welcome to the 4th episode of DVDecember in 2019. Today, we watched All-Star Superman.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we did. It wasn't that good.
Okay, but you know what was good? The source material. It won a bundle of awards, including the Eisner for Best New Series in 2006 and Best Continuing Series in 2007. It was very popular and has been looked back on as one of, if not the best Superman stories of all time. This movie was a bit of a disappointment in the adaptation phase. It struggles to trim 12 densely packed issues about Superman's last days alive into a hour and 15 minutes.
I think that's the issue I had with it. It's not that it wasn't good, it was just so rapid fire that they were just throwing information at me.
But let's get into the plot. So, Dr. Leo Quintum and his team are exploring the sun when they're sabotaged by a genetically enhanced time bomb clone made by Lex Luthor. Superman's cells absorb too much solar radiation, and he's gonna die.
That's the way it is.
Lex Luthor gets basically the death sentence, and Superman wants to spend more time with Lois Lane, and so he reveals his identity to her. They go on a date to the Fortress of Solitude, and weird things happen.
Mm-hmm. It all makes sense now. He's brought me here to be the mother of a race of super children. Can't let that happen. They'll grow up and lie to everybody.
Like, it gets very date rapey.
Yeah, it gets really, really weird. I'm not even going to say in the comic it makes more sense, because I feel like it makes just as much sense. But all of the stuff in this kind of just works better in a comic book format, because you're going in being like, yeah, this is the same format where Superboy punches the wall of reality and that brings Jason Todd back.
Everything is...
Like, this is what comics are. They're weird. Basically, she gets super paranoid. She shoots Clark with a kryptonite gun, and he discovers, oh, cool, I'm immune to kryptonite now.
Yeah, he just brushes that right off.
Also, we get introduced to Perpetual Best Boy, little baby Sun Eater.
I found it wandering in orbit near Jupiter. Poor thing would have starved.
Ew. What do you feed him?
Suns. Little ones I make here on my cosmic anvil.
He reveals Lois's birthday present.
Mm-hmm.
And Lois's birthday present is...
to have his powers for 24 hours.
Which is a baller gift. She's never getting a better gift than that.
Ever.
And then they go flying around, and when they go to Metropolis, Metropolis is being attacked by lizard people.
Yeah, randomly, just coming out of the sewers.
Which, I mean, it's Metropolis, it makes sense. And who's there to save the day? None other than Samson from Samson and Delilah fame, and Atlas from the dude who carries the world on his shoulders fame. And they're beating up the lizard people. I believe Samson chucks the leader into space.
His lungs just burst. Excuse me.
And then Samson and Atlas start flirting up Lois. And they give her this, like, super fancy radioactive necklace. Oh, hi, Sombra.
Lay down, baby.
This will be our thumbnail. Smile. Okay, that's the thumbnail.
So, Samson shows Superman a newspaper that has a headline of Superman Dead. Mm-hmm. And it's written by Clark Kent. Fun times. And then, out of freaking nowhere, the Ultra Sphinx shows up.
Because of the radioactive necklace.
And he's like, that was my necklace. And Samson and Atlas are like, yeah, so about that.
Sorry, bro.
So Lois becomes Schrodinger's cat because she's both dead and alive.
Mm-hmm. And then Superman has to answer the
unanswerable question of what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
They surrender.
Sphinx is like, cool, that works.
That's fine.
Takes the necklace, gives Lois back, and then Atlas and Samson are like, are you afraid of a little bit of a challenge? Is Superman really a coward? And he's like, okay, enough. And then he arm wrestles both of them and breaks both their arms. And I liked that. They end their date, and Lois still doesn't 100% believe that Clark is Superman, which is a little weird.
Yeah,
but
I didn't understand that. Then there's that one moment later on where she's like, so you are Superman? And I'm like, didn't we already do this? We just did this.
So it cuts to the next scene, which is another one of the issues, so it seems very abrupt because it is.
The whole movie is abrupt. It's just like things keep popping out of nowhere, and it's like the time that they give each storyline is like 2 minutes.
Yeah, but the next thing is Clark Kent interviewing Lex Luthor in his cell on death row. And then Lex Luthor shows that, yeah, he already bored a tunnel out of his prison cell and could escape anytime he wants, and gives Clark Kent a, boat ride home with his, niece or something.
She's 16, speaks 30 languages, and aspires to someday rule the world. I may let her after I'm done with it.
Clark is like, you could escape anytime, and he's like, yeah, but I don't need to because I've won, because guess what? Superman is dying, and that's your headline. That's the gift I'm giving you, Clark Kent.
So there's that.
There's that.
Moving on.
Then, in another change from the comics, Superman tells Lois that he's found a hospitable planet for the bottled city of Kandor.
Yeah, I was really thrown off by this because this was one of the shortest plot points that they had. He was like, by the way, city in a bottle, and then he's like, bye, I'm gonna find a home, and then he's like, I'm back, bitches, and you're like,
so
okay.
Kandor is very, it's a well-established thing in the comics. So they didn't have to set that up in the comics because, once again, this assumes you know DC.
Yeah, and I think that's why I didn't like it, because as somebody who is not a reader of DC Comics, who does not know every single thing about DC Comics, I was really rushed through it.
Superman leaves for a few months to put Kandor on its own planet, which is very different from what the comics do, but I understand it. They had to cut some issues for time, and so the storyline they cut out was probably the best one to cut out. But when he returns, there's 2 Kryptonians running the place.
What?
And they're related to him. Basically, they're Kryptonian astronauts that had been lost and showed up on Earth, and they're basically like, we're gonna make this a new Krypton, and
Destroy
all these
everything.
humans are, should be serving us.
Destroy all humans.
And Superman's like, okay, that's enough. And they throw down a little bit.
And then the Kryptonians start getting really weak.
The Kryptonians start getting really weak, and they pass out, and
Superman
takes them to his Fortress of Solitude, and he reveals that they're dying because they flew through a kryptonite force field or whatever. And so they're dying, and the only way to save them is to put them in the Phantom Zone. And so they go to the Phantom Zone together, and they live happily ever after.
And become
there.
the mayors of the Phantom Zone.
Which, once again, that story is not given nearly enough time to cook.
Not at all.
I have...
It started, it ended, and then we moved on.
I think they should have honestly cut that storyline out and done the issue of A Day in the Life of Superman, where you see him, visiting kids in the cancer ward and all this different stuff. But, alas, I was not the writer of this. So after doing all that, Superman writes his last will and testament, and Lex Luthor is put in the electric chair. He's given his last meal, which is just this, juice that he wants. He drinks it, then they electrocute the hell out of him, and Superman finishes his will, and then Lex Luthor is like, you fools! That drink I made was the Superman power cocktail
the same
that
one
was earlier.
that
So
Lois
Lex
had.
Luthor now has Superman's powers for a full 24 hours. And then Lex Luthor poisons the sun. Because comics. There's a computer thing.
We don't need to get into it.
Anyway, We do need to get into it, though, because in the battle...
There's just a lot to unpack in this movie.
The baby Sun Eater comes to save Superman.
And then Lex kills the baby... the Sun Eater kills
and then
the baby
evil
Sun,
the tyrant Sun, kills the baby Sun Eater. And it's very sad.
It is a very sad moment. There's just so much to unpack in this movie, but it was so short, so it doesn't feel like there's a lot, but like when you're going point for point, it's like, man, there really is way too much.
There's way too much that's not fleshed out, but also it feels like nothing happens.
Yes.
And so Lex Luthor and Clark Kent go toe-to-toe. He shoots him with a gravity gun that accelerates his powers. He basically has a come-to-Jesus moment where he realizes how Superman sees the world. And I thought this was probably the only part in the movie that really worked.
Everything's connected. Every one. And this is how he sees things all the time. It's a cruel joke. The mechanistic clockwork of reality hinging on a precious, impossible defiance of entropy, on life. And the clockwork doesn't care. It's like it's all just us in here together. We're all we've got. If it wasn't for you, I could have saved the world.
If it had mattered to you, Luthor, you could have saved the world years ago.
You're right.
And then Superman realizes that the sun is about to die. Superman's about to die. You see energy cracking through his skin. He's about to basically become energy.
Yeah.
And so he gives Lois one final kiss and then shoots into the sky, flies into the sun, and reignites it. And the movie makes a change where Lex Luthor sequences Superman's DNA to create a new Superman that Lois can give birth to. The end. So, All-Star Superman.
Yeah.
Amazing comic that just cannot be translated into a movie form.
Comparatively to what we've already watched, this is...
better than Batman Ninja.
That's what I was going to say. Better, obviously. Anything is better than... The video of my birth into this world is better than Batman Ninja. I would probably give this, like, a 2.5 out of 5. I thought that there were really good moments that they just didn't give time to be a moment, you know?
I think that's fair. I think on a 5-point scale, 2.5 is where I would put it as well. It has some moments where you're like, oh, this is the true story shining through. But then it just feels like a checklist movie where they were like, this is the comic, we gotta hit these boxes and
be done within an hour and a half.
And be done within this time limit. And it's disappointing, but honestly, there's worse movies out there. If you're a diehard Superman fan and this is streaming somewhere, it's not the worst movie to watch.
As somebody who's not like a diehard DC or Superman fan, I thought it was pretty subpar. I mean, I kind of felt like I had wasted my time at the end of it.
Yeah, I feel like this is only for the hardest of hardcore Superman fans who really want to see a Superman movie.
Yeah.
And even then, there's some better ones. So if you've watched all the better Superman movies...
And
you don't want to watch the worst Superman movies, this is a decent Superman movie.
Yeah.
And by decent, I mean it's a passable Superman movie. My recommendation is to go on Comixology.com and get All-Star Superman and just read that. And if you're a diehard Superman fan, you've already read it, so just read it again. Because it's
better than the movie.
More satisfying than this movie.
Yeah. But next week,
we're watching what some have said is the best DC animated movie of all time.
Batman Under the Red Hood.
I was building up for a triumphant reveal of Batman Under the Red Hood. It's done. Tune in next week. Like and subscribe.
We're not fighting. It's fine.